That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Babygirl, the third film directed by Halina Reijn, which premiered in competition at the 2024 Venice Film Festival, where Nicole Kidman won the Volpe Cup for Best Actress. A24 is releasing it on Christmas Day 2024.
I know this director did Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Yes, which we reviewed.
And what are the other films?
Her debut was Instinct, which I have not seen. And prior to directing, she was an actor. She starred in Verhoeven's Black Book. She had a supporting role in that, so she's been around for a minute.
What is Babygirl about? A high-powered CEO puts her career and family on the line when she begins a torrid affair with her much younger intern. What is your pull quote?
Nicole Kidman captivates in Babygirl, a rare English-language film which bluntly articulates female sexuality in an authentic, awkward, and impressive narrative which suggests, perhaps most subversively, you can't always get what you want, you get what you need.
Mine. Babygirl plays like a trashy art house 90s erotic thriller with a twist, which is perfectly fine by me. I did like this movie.
I don't think it's I think it, for the subject matter, in an English language film, mind you, it's kind of elegant.
The trashy part refers to, there are some comedic moments that I think, there's an awkwardness to these characters that reads true to me.
Same.
But I can see how people think it's like a soap opera.
Sure.
So that's where the trashy comes from. But with a twist, meaning that this woman is not punished in the end, necessarily.
As those string of 80s and 90s erotic thrillers, punish those that harm the womb of the heteronormative.
And like I mentioned, there is an awkwardness to it. It's also not particularly sexy.
No, and
which was a surprise to me.
I don't think that's the aim, though. Yeah,
I don't either. So, that's what I'm referring to. But the story is pretty simple. Nicole Kidman plays this high-powered CEO. Mm-hmm. And
Romy.
There is a new intern played by Dickinson.
Samuel.
And she begins an affair with him. He's the aggressor. And it's clear that she is interested in being sort of dominated, but also she likes this idea of doing things that maybe are a little dangerous, like the idea of getting caught or getting in trouble.
There are great consequences, yes.
So she's doing this thing and everything kind of comes to a head because Nicole's assistant starts dating Dickinson.
Esme, played by Sophie Wilde.
And Esme, is really invested in this company and in Nicole Kidman and is concerned that Nicole's behavior might jeopardize both of their positions. So it's not so much that Esme is jealous as much as she wants Nicole to get her shit together. Mm-hmm. So Esme confronts Nicole's character. And that causes Nicole to be open with her husband, played by Antonio Banderas.
Mm-hmm. Jacob, a kind of open.
Well, she minimizes it and straight up lies. She says that she had a one-time fling with someone he doesn't know, and it was kind of to satisfy these urges that she has that she's too embarrassed to talk about. Mm-hmm. And Antonio Banderas blows up on her ass, tells her that she needs to leave. Thankfully, they're rich, and they have a beautiful country home and a beautiful penthouse in the city. So while he's in the city, he's a playwright or director. So while he's working on a show in the city, Nicole's staying at the country home. And one day, Dickinson comes over, one night. And then they're canoodling in the living room when guess who walks in? Antonio. Mm-hmm. Assuming he was trying to maybe patch things up. So imagine his surprise when Dickinson is there. And he realizes that she was lying to me. This is not a one-time thing, and I know who this fool is. Antonio had met him a few times. Mm-hmm. Dickinson's character had spent time with her family. Nicole and Antonio have 2 kids. So there's a physical altercation between Antonio and Harris. And Antonio kind of gets his ass whooped.
It's one of my favorite scenes in the film, though.
So while they're both sitting in the front room, putting frozen peas on their eyes, they have a chance to talk. Mm-hmm. And I think they both have a realization. Yeah. Harris realizes, this shit ain't worth it. And I think Antonio realizes that maybe he's a little out of touch with what his wife needs, what's going on in their relationship, perhaps.
And what he thinks about needs.
So we flash forward and see that Harris no longer works for the company. Esme has been promoted. Nicole and Antonio appear to be doing like some exercises to improve their sex life. And the film ends with another executive at the company has clearly caught wind of the affair that occurred. And so he propositions Nicole. But now that this weight has been lifted off of her shoulders, she's not afraid. So she gets his ass together. Like, don't you ever talk to me like that again. I don't care what you think you know. This is not going to happen. The end. So the ending's positive in that she was able to be truthful, and it seems like her and her husband are going to be able to hopefully work through this and come out on the other side better.
Yeah, it's a cathartic ending.
The movie's not what I thought it would be. Based on what you were talking about and other people, I thought it was going to be much more salacious, and the way people are saying Nicole's performance is so brave, I was assuming she was being hypersexual. I do think, so this film fits in a trilogy of films that we were talking about, and we've reviewed all of them.
Of 2024, directed by women, The Substance, Night Bitch, and this film, I think, are like kind of a perfect trifecta of what film can look like when women are directing their own stories.
And I was thinking, I'm probably going to give this film the same score I gave the other two films, and I think it's excellent. So then it's like, well, how would I differentiate them? And I was thinking I would probably say Babygirl gets the best performance from Nicole Kidman. I think I would give best screenplay to Night Bitch and best direction to The Substance. But yeah, I think these three films as a whole really address issues involving mature women, like sex, aging, beauty, career, motherhood, in a what I thought was a refreshing way as a person who does not identify as female and can't have a baby. But
same.
I really appreciated all of them, and I think it's because we have women at the helm of these projects.
Yeah. I think that's a big, I think, and outside of just those three films, there's a strong showing for films directed by women. And also like female-centric films like The Seed of the Sacred Fig comes to mind. There was, I think, if you're really looking at the broad spectrum of movies this year, I don't know, there's an impressive amount of themes that seem different, like something different is on the verge of happening.
What did I like? Nicole's performance, I think, I don't think it's that scandalous. You know, people were saying Demi and like her showing nudity. We get nudity from Nicole.
It's not so much that it's brave, it's that a person of her caliber kind of allowing herself to be so vulnerable and in, you know, kind of compromising positions.
I just straight up thought she gave really good acting. I don't even think it's brave, vulnerable. I just think she acted the hell out of this role. So I would give that to her. I thought Harris Dickinson was really cute.
Same.
What I like about, we'll talk about it, but I think the fact that these two characters, it's not this sultry, you know, it's not like Sharon Stone and
Basic Instinct.
And Sliver with, what's his name? The Baldwin? Steven?
Billy, I believe.
You know, it's not trying to be one of those like picture perfect, like romance novel type versions of what like an erotic sex scene could be. I think in this film, the eroticism for the characters, because I didn't feel that it was sexy, but it makes sense to me why it was sexy to them, involves them being awkward with each other.
Yes, well, because the translation of what's the fantasy in our mind, in finding someone that's going to participate in that fantasy with you, it's not seamless.
Well, and then executing it, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that worked very well. I like the way the film looks.
It was shot by Jasper Wolf, who has done previous exceptional work on a film called Manos by Alejandro Landis, if you have had the chance to see that. But yeah.
I liked the score and the soundtrack.
Christabel Tapia de Veer, who did the score for the first two wonderful seasons of The White Lotus, which are very memorable, as well as the two Smile films.
Oh, wow.
But yes, the score, but even the soundtrack selections, including Robin, La Tigre, and there's a scene with George Michael's father figure.
Listen, I wrote down that I forget how much I like that song.
Same, yeah.
Until I hear it. And I'm like, why isn't this like on my playlist on rotation constantly?
But I really like it set to that scene.
Yeah. It makes sense. I'm just going to start going through my notes. The film opens with Nicole Kidman having sex with her husband, Antonio Banderas, and he finishes and seems satisfied. And then we see her immediately get up.
She's made noises suggesting she was satisfied, but...
She gets up, puts on clothes, runs in like a nightgown, runs into another room in their huge country home, and begins to masturbate looking at pornography that... It's like a fetish type.
It's a role-playing clip.
I'm trying to choose my words carefully so we don't get demonetized. But like role-playing, maybe a sense of violence or...
It's a version of what she comes to act out herself.
Yes. So immediately we get a sense that at bare minimum, maybe she's not satisfied sexually with her husband. And then we meet Harris Dickinson, and it's in the trailer that Nicole's walking to work and a dog that has gone loose appears to, like it appears like it might attack her when Harris calls it over and calms it down and gives it back to its owner. And then we see that he's actually heading to her corporate office as an intern. So he introduces himself to her, and it's a little awkward because he's a little too aggressive.
Yes.
It's like a group meeting and he kind of talks out of turn. But then later he meets with her privately and she asks him, how'd you
calm that dog down?
And he's like, I gave it a cookie. And she goes, do you always have cookies on you? He goes, yeah, why? Do you want one? And there begins this really, it's inappropriate in the context of the story, but as the audience, it's really cute.
Well, she asked him to get her a coffee, and he's like, you shouldn't drink coffee after lunch. She's like, how many of those have you had today? She goes, none of your business. Seven.
So I think, it's disarming to us, but also to these characters, I think. And it feels cliche, but it's true that a woman like her, like this specific character, clearly wants to be dominated, but also knows her position in the world.
Position in the world, and in a family where, a mother tends to become invisible to maybe the husband in a certain way, and then her children who see her in a completely different way and are often disparaging in their commentary towards her.
Well, yeah, because we get a scene. Well, before this happens, there's a holiday party, and Nicole. Well, Harris Dickinson is dancing and takes off his tie, so it falls to the ground. So the next morning, when Nicole's at the office, she goes to the area where the party was and sees the cleaning crew and grabs the tie. And then we immediately see her go into her office, lower the shades, and she practically devours that tie.
It's not quite Isabel Huppert sniffing semen-stained Kleenex, as in the piano teacher, but this is the closest we're ever going to get to that in the English language.
So after that, she decides to go to her, I'm assuming, dermatologist to get injectables. And I've heard a lot of people say how bold it is of her to do that. I mean, it's clear she gets them, so I don't know. It's like when Cardi B posted her veneer popped off. It's like, well, we all know she has fake teeth.
No,
so
but
it's not that.
There's
whatever.
something about seeing behind the curtain, which I think is still considered somewhat of a novelty, maybe.
For sure. And so then getting back to what you were mentioning, the older daughter...
Isabel, played by Esther McGregor, daughter of Ewan McGregor, who has also had a small bit part in The Room Next Door, which we didn't mention.
Oh, she... which I thought was funny because the daughter notices that Nicole got injectables and comments to her that she looks ridiculous.
She tells her she looks like a dead fish.
Yeah. And then Harris notices. And I thought that was funny because I couldn't notice. I mean, she does look painted more than in the opening. Well, I guess in the opening, she does look a little garish walking on the street, but that lighting wasn't favorable. I just think it's funny that they didn't try harder to make her look a little different.
Like there was a difference after the injections, yeah.
She does dress more sexy, but we only see her for like 5 minutes before she gets the injectable. It's only like 5 minutes before she meets Harris Dickinson. But I thought she looked great. There are a couple of gowns she wears. There's a blue one and like a golden one that just looks so amazing on her. That being said, her wig game in this movie is not worst list bad, but it's limited. Like whoever installed that hair said you can only do one or two things. You can put it up, you can put it down. That's it. There's a center part, nothing else is moving.
But Nicole Kidman, that might be because she's so busy. I mean, she had what, 2 or 3 series this year and a couple films.
I know, but I feel like a woman who looks like her, who dresses like her, who has all that money. I mean,
sure,
the hair could have been better.
Sure.
So then they start playing like cat and mouse because Harris has finagled a way to make Nicole his mentor. Mm-hmm. So the first time they meet, it's in like a conference room, and she's chosen one that's kind of isolated. Mm-hmm. And I thought their first meeting was really cute because they're fumbling through, like he's trying to be seductive, she's playing coy, but then also doesn't know how to let go. So she's trying to show like, I'm the CEO, you're the intern. But it's like, ma'am, it's clear that you want to jump on this kid. Mm-hmm. And then they kiss and she's like, oh, this is so inappropriate. And then immediately wants to see him again. They end up at a bar. I think this scene is in...
With the milk?
And I didn't know what I thought of that. Like that scene. So Nicole and some of her colleagues end up at a bar where some of the underlings also go. It's like a ritual, but sort of the leadership sits in one area and the underlings are in another. And the leadership team gets drinks, and one of the drinks is milk. And they're all like, who the hell ordered milk? And I didn't order that. Did you order that? And then Nicole grabs it and starts to drink it. And some lady says, don't you drink that? What, like, don't drink that. And she does. And it's clear that Harris sent it to her. I thought that was a little, like, I'm not sure what to make of that scene.
Well, it's signifying that, well, it's a non-alcoholic beverage, milk, meant for, somebody that doesn't have the power or the control to be able to ingest a controlled substance. And also, I think the alignment of milk with animals, like as when he later makes her drink milk out of a saucer.
That moment made more sense to me, that it was sort of like degrading, but then he's playing this game with her, like, I want to degrade you, but I also want to tell you how beautiful you are. I think the milk in the bowl, like she's a cat, made sense. But I think the scene in the bar felt a little like, I'm assuming it was meant to show that she's being risque because her colleagues are saying like, girl, I know you're not about to drink this glass of random milk, which would beg the question, well, who sent it to you?
Right, but she knows, and he's watching her do it, so that already there's this, secret relationship happening.
That's true too. It's important to know that the older daughter is in a relationship with another young lady, but then she's having like an affair with the neighbor girl. So essentially cheating on her girlfriend, which is something that the older daughter and her mother, Nicole, bond with later, because the daughter can see that her mother is distraught. She knows that her parents have separated for a time. She actually comes to visit her mom and says, Dad's having a hard time. I think that you two can work it out. You should go see him. And then that's when the daughter says, my girlfriend, I think her name's Mary, forgave me, implying that I'm sure it has something to do with you cheating on Dad. Well,
there are interesting intergenerational rifts and conflicts going on, because it's the lesbian daughter that's telling her mother, kind of like, I see you and you're going to be fine. As opposed to like films in the 50s where, say, like All That Heaven Allows, where her children are aghast at her finding love after Dad has died. And then, of course, with her assistant, played by Sophie Wilde, who has at the confrontation moment between them, tells her, it was different when you were younger and you had to sleep your way to the top, basically. Right. That's not how we do it now.
So the first time they have sex, Harris has Nicole meet him at like a shitty motel. And of course she's uncomfortable because she's a fancy lady. And then he comes in and she's playing the role like, we shouldn't be doing this. I'm just here to tell you that this is wrong. And then he's trying to be a dom, but I really like that they were fumbling through it. It's not salacious. There's no nudity in that particular scene.
No.
Because he tries to get her to get on her knees and eat like candy out of his hand. And then he tells her to get into the corner. And I thought that was so funny because she's standing there like the Blair Witch. But after that, we see that they're having sex at work because she has this beautiful corner office with a private bathroom.
I like that scene too because he does bring her to orgasm, but she starts crying afterwards.
That's right,
like it's very. I don't know. I this is the second time I've seen it, and there are moments that I think are just highly emotional that got me both times that I saw them, and that was one of them. I felt for her.
Oh, interesting. Well, so Harris shows up at Nicole's house with her husband and kids there.
With a legitimate reason.
With legitimate reason that she left her laptop at work and we didn't want to send a courier because there's sensitive information on it. And of course, she's like shaking. But everyone likes him. Antonio, the kids, they're like overly enthusiastic about this kid. So, of course, she's like, okay, time to go, get in the car. And she tells him like this is inappropriate and they get into an argument. And he says to her, I don't want a girlfriend. You look like a mother and I don't want that. So there are moments when he's demeaning towards her. I
think those are all calculated in the game that they're both playing. They're both playing a game, which they admit later in the film.
They do. So of course she's frustrated and probably upset. So that night, Antonio tries to have sex with her and she just freaks out. Like, don't touch me. She starts crying and then she just blurts out, I've never had an orgasm with you.
What I find really interesting though is at first she's responding to him. She's receptive to his, he's like, do you want to play a little? And she's letting him touch her. And then she just changes up completely.
Yeah. So then the next morning, they kind of go about business as usual. Like they're getting ready to leave for work separately. And Antonio goes, did you mean what you said last night? And then instead of her taking that opportunity to speak her truth, she kind of downplays it and goes, well, you know,
I've been stressed out at work.
I've been stressed out. And he's like, something about you're not normal. She goes, look at me. I'm not normal.
She's like, yeah.
So, I mean, I think it does a good job of showing that they're both sort of complicit in...
Well, a very simple line that's repeated a couple times is be honest. Do you like this? Do you want this? If not, what is it that you want? And it's funny, you know, especially the older you get, how... It seems like that's more difficult to not just articulate but to be blunt about.
Well, I think, yeah. I mean, there's fear of being honest because people are afraid of the consequences. I think also there's an element of, at least for them, I felt for Antonio, like, yeah, you probably missed a lot of signs and that's part of your responsibility is that you should have your antennae always tuned to your partner. But also, like, we've been together a long time. And for you to say this to me right now is like, in this way, it just feels like, yes, you should be allowed to get frustrated. But I think I also deserve for you to then follow up with like, we need to talk about it.
Yes, of course.
And so the fact that she did, and I felt bad for him because I'm sure he feels like, well, we're so deep in it. And we have so much to do. You're like, because the other thing is Nicole's company is going through a major transition. I think they're launching, it's not quite clear what she runs, but it seems like to be some sort of like maybe like 3PL or something to do with like distribution.
My first note about this is that she lives in a world of automation.
Sure. Yeah. And they're going through a big transition. I think they're announcing a new technology or something. So there's a lot of stress in her work. And then Antonio is working on staging a new play,
which is also about automation.
So they have a lot going on, and I think being with someone for a long time and then you have this big life together, like there's sometimes no room. And I think that's what this film does, like this story does well, is show that like these two people don't these are not like young people who are newlywed and like trying to figure life out. These are very established, successful people who are running finely tuned machines, and I just don't have the space to throw a wrench in there. And even the way they handle it also seems like the most efficient. Like they do have the blip of him saying get out,
which again though, compared to at the same film festival I watched all 7 episodes of Disclaimer back to back, and how the Sacha Baron Cohen character, the husband to Cate Blanchett in that series, reacts to her infidelity from 30 years prior is so ridiculous and over the top. And again, Antonio Banderas has an outburst, but I feel like we get so few films about adults that show rational behavior after, you know, your gut reaction.
Well, rational. He did try to whip that man's ass, but
Again, though, after that gut reaction.
No, but I agree. Like it felt authentic. Like we have a lot at stake. We don't have time. We are obviously like high performing people. We need to, like, we have an afternoon to like get this shit together.
But again, high performing people that since they were born, the culture has ingrained in them that they have to be a certain way and everything. And there's no straying from that path.
Yeah. We recently reviewed Lars and the Real Girl on our Patreon, and it reminded me of, this film reminded me of that, in this idea that people find ways to get their needs met. And like Nicole's character is trying to do that in her way, even though it's risky and ultimately hurtful to her husband.
Well, but it's interesting that the opportunity presented itself to her in a way that I find intriguing, because our conversation afterwards was, you found it a little hard to believe that a woman of this age, married this long, hasn't done something already. But if we're talking about risk and the titillation of consequence and risk involved, happens with a perfect match at work.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that. I was saying that I think because her character says that I've had these feelings of wanting to do these kind of things since I was a little girl, like for as long as I can remember. And this lady's like damn near 60, right? Like, so it's been half a century that she's been feeling like a little nasty freak. It just seems hard to me that a woman with that much power and resources.
But even women with power, we try to
No, that's true.
inhibit them and keep them in a box still, that they can't. You may have power, but you can only act and do this with it.
But we also see her doing different types of therapy. She does like light therapy, water therapy. I'm assuming we don't see her with an actual therapist, but I'm sure she does that too. So she is, well, no, I actually think she does do therapy, because she does something with like, there's someone asking her.
The rapid imagery.
Yeah, and asking her what she sees. So this woman has put a lot of work into trying to understand herself. So that's why I kind of felt like it seems, but I don't think it's, I think what you're saying could also be right.
And yet there's such guilt, like as a gay person, the one scene where she's trying to articulate those feelings that she had, very much felt like it was another kind of gut response from me, was that's how it felt as a teenager. Like, this can't be me. I refuse to acknowledge that this is something I'm feeling, because that's not me and I don't want it to be.
Sure. So Nicole's younger daughter has a birthday party, and Nicole invites her assistant, Esme. And Esme shows up with Harris, and Nicole loses it.
Yeah.
Like, are you with her? Yeah. Well, we're not a thing. And she gets mad. And it's very obvious.
Well, he's like, isn't that your husband in the other room?
Right. And it's clear that Esme knows something's not right. So then the next scene is at work.
No, Esme shows up to her house.
They
have a scene at work.
They have a scene at work where
Nicole tries to strong arm her.
Nicole confronts Esme like, hey, I know you want to talk about your promotion, but I want to talk to you about Samuel, Harris Dickinson's character. Because, if you want to grow in this company, it's kind of dangerous to have these sort of interactions. You're a woman in power. And Esme can tell, like, I don't think so. So then Esme shows up at Nicole's house again, but confronts her. And like I already mentioned, basically tells her like, I'm relying on you. I've invested in you and this company. I want to see a woman like you in power. I'm not going to tear you down, but like, you're not going to ruin this for me either. So you're going to leave my boyfriend alone.
And we've seen Esme ask several times about, can we talk about my promotion?
Yeah.
And, Nicole or Romy is so busy, but it's like, part of your busyness is due to this extracurricular business going on. Like,
well, I like when Esme confronts her and Nicole says, you're confusing ambition with morality.
Good line.
There's a difference. I thought that was a really good line. I also like that we see that Esme does get a promotion.
Yeah.
And I like that we don't even, I want to believe that, because we're told that Harris Dickinson's character got a job in Japan. I like, and I want to believe that when Harris told Esme I'm leaving, she was like, deuces. I like this idea of this young woman who, I have to say, she was on my worst hair list of 2022.
You did drag her for her performance and talk to her.
Her hairdo. I loved her hair in this movie. She had some curls at one point that could have been combed out, but whatever.
She used to look good. Talk to me.
She looks great. Okay, one I can see how some people criticize this film. It worked well for me.
Same.
There is an area that I do wish we would have gotten more of, and maybe in exchange for not so many awkward sex scenes with Nicole. And they're not like, I mean, they're having sex, but they're not like salacious nude sex scenes. Is that I wish we would have expounded more or had a greater examination of these dark feelings Nicole has, these fantasies, and how she feels like I don't get a sense of, I don't need to know what they are exactly, but I would have liked to know what she thinks might happen.
Sure.
We do get an inkling of it earlier on when she tells her husband if they can perform a sex act a certain way or use pornography in the sex act, and he kind of gets like, ooh, no. Mm-hmm. But so that is an indication that he might not be receptive.
Yeah.
But I think that this woman's feelings, the character, were more interesting to me than her having these awkward moments with.
But if it's about the situation, I can agree with that, but I think it's really tightly, everything is tightly wound together. Even at 114 minutes, I feel like every scene has a beat, has a purpose that gets us to the third act. And
I don't think there's fluff.
Yeah, but you were talking about comparing it to two characters in Beauty and Black, because we had just watched that, Tyler Perry's atrocious
Mallory
series.
Ballalary and her driver.
Yes.
And like in 8 episodes, they have the same seduction scene at work. Like
over
5
and
times.
over again. But what is happening is a power struggle that is going on here. So while similar things are kind of being said in several interactions between Harris Dickinson and Nicole Kidman, they're trying to maneuver and shift in ways that are kind of uncomfortable, and they don't really know how to do it.
Well, that's what's wrong with Beauty and Black. I think it's Tyler Perry, right?
I mean, the characters in this don't.
No, but I was going to say, what doesn't work in Beauty and the Black, besides is Tyler Perry writing sex scenes between a man and a woman, just comes across like he's trying to write like his version of a romance novel. Mm-hmm. Versus in this movie, what makes it feel so authentic is the awkwardness of it, and which provides some discomfort that goes beyond, oh, this is risque.
Right.
I didn't feel like it was so risque, like they're going to be caught. I was more like, ooh, you two don't really know what you're trying to do here.
And I don't think it's an erotic thriller. I don't really think it's trying to be, but it doesn't really have a sense of danger. And I think that it will seem, again, it's one of those films that's going to seem too risque for people that don't even want to deal with the complexities of human behavior. And then for those that have seen or done much worse in their own lives, it's going to seem like old hat. Because a lot of the conversations I had about this were comparing it unfavorably to two Isabel Mar films, like The Piano Teacher and Elle. It's like, but those are in a kind of a different realm. And I think that this is daring in its own way. And I really, those two films don't really have happy endings, and what the lead character has to go through in there is really traumatic. I don't know, this just has something that's so hopeful to me in it that, I don't know, like I have a smile on my face at the end of it, which seems inexplicable.
What would you give Babygirl?
4.
I thought it was excellent. I would give it 4 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.